You're in the Business Insurance Zone with me, Steve Savant, national insurance columnist and financial color commentator. This week on The Biz, the Life Insurance Income Series 3, the tax items. And on today's show, the 401k alternative for personal retirement with Eric Palmer, Director of Marketing.
When it comes to life insurance, annuities, long-term care, disability, or group pension plans, we're the news you can use.
Well, welcome everyone to the Business Insurance Zone. We're broadcasting live to a nationwide audience of financial advisors right here in Fountain Hills, Arizona, home of America's largest fountain. And today with me again, and if you remember a couple weeks back, we did back-to-back shows on life income. This is our third week. We had Ken on for the first 4 days, but we have to do a redux. Everybody's asking me, what do we do? How do we calculate all this? And we're going to talk to Eric Palmer. Eric, thanks for coming to the show.
Glad to be here.
We're going to talk about this calculator in the second half. We're going to set you all up for it because this, to me, is the proof of the pudding.
Right.
If I can quantify this, if I can sit down and actually crunch the numbers, because I want it to be good for the client. Hey, if we lose, we lose.
Right.
All right? Happy to do it. But I'm suspect, especially if you watch the first 4 days of this show, of this whole series, we're really suspect now because I've did all the marginal brackets. We started looking at brackets. We started looking at taxable event. We started looking at Social Security all in. Because remember, we're trying to use another retirement alternative and to be parallel with the retirement that everybody has, which is Social Security.
Right.
And our end game, if it's possible, our end game is to make sure that not only does our retirement plan income come out tax-free, but that my Social Security plan comes tax-free as long as I'm not doing anything in my plan to cause it to be taxable.
Right.
So, okay, enough for that. That was a long introduction. Well, let's talk about 401k plans. And I have to say, we were shocked. One of our main bloggers, and I brought this to you, one of our main bloggers said, hey, Steve, you realize that employee or ERISA contracts don't get any deduction on their Social Security and Medicaid. And I think everybody that's in 401k plans think, oh, you know, I'm getting a full deduction, whatever I take out, that's on Social Security, my
Right.
FICA, my FUTA, SUTA, all that's all being, but it's not.
Right.
Talk a little bit about that because that, I think, is a shocker to most consumers.
Well, I think we think we're doing everything right when we get into the 401k plan at the employer. We go to work. They give us the packet. We pick the colors that are associate our risk level. I mean, I'm a little bit of red. I'm a little bit of green, and I think I'm all in and I'm done. We then rely on Social Security to be there, and nobody thinks about the mechanics of Social Security. You know, there's a reason why people are still doing mailing programs talking about this taxation of Social Security because consumers are still, dumbfounded by the fact that their Social Security is even taxed. So. It comes down to
this. Think about before you get too far. Think about this. I went on the government for the first time. I was on with Ken Davis last week. We did our Social Security, right? I'm on there and I'm thinking like this. I am lost. I'm on the first page. I'm trying to figure out how do I do this, and I'm lost.
Right.
And so people that are doing mailers, it doesn't surprise me because I think the government's doing a terrible job. Maybe by design. I don't want to say that, but maybe by design. I don't understand where we're going on this, and so go ahead and continue. I didn't interrupt.
Well, essentially, again, we think we've done all the right
Right.
things. Then we come to the point where we take the income and the net spendable dollars. We talk about it all the time. The net spendable dollars are less, and a lot of times they can't figure out why. So there's a portion coming out of the Social Security. The income that they're earning is still going towards their AGI, so it's still calculated into that taxation, and that's sort of where the downfall comes into play. So whether or not you even believe Social Security is going to exist for certain age brackets or not, you have to identify all the different ways or tools or mechanisms that we could provide to maximize the amount of income that comes out of all those vehicles and lands in your bank account.
Yeah, we're just talking, by the way, we're just discussing basic ideas of 401ks, comparing it to a non-deductible life insurance. Although this week, we're talking about a way to give a tax reimbursement equivalent, which I think was huge out of policy loans. And if you want to do that in year one, we have a couple carriers that play in that area. Now, we just had the regulations hit the street about 5 weeks ago on the 408B2. Full disclosures on 401k fees.
Right.
It's all on the table now. And think about it. Remember, when we talk about, especially in our IUL program and other programs that we talk about income for life, when we talk about this, we're talking about the way we construct the contract. Most of the people are not still designing these contracts, right? So when you see our commercials and it says, oh, by the way, our expense load's about the 10th year, we're about the same as a 401k. Yeah, that's based on us suppressing the death benefit, doing every single Tamra game in town
Right.
as a designer.
Well, I think that's a good point. You lead into what are we doing here at Brokers Alliance to help our advisors and help consumers out there? And I think that we've focused heavily on education and training because you have to really design these policies, you have to design these alternatives appropriately, or we're missing out on some things. It'll still deliver to some extent, but there's more juice in the lemon, so to speak, that we can squeeze out to make sure that it runs optimally. And if we don't do that, then we have too much cost working against the rate of return. Rate of return is the variable that nobody can control. So what do we have to do? We have to create as little barrier as possible to earn money, and that's what we do with the design in these contracts. Or even in we talk about again fees and the plans and the ways that we can explore reducing fees or mitigating against fees. That all has to do with net spendable income. Can we get the most return for that 1%, that 2% credit, that rate that we're getting? How much of that's actually applied to our cash that goes in the pool for income?
Yeah, and just a little heads up, if we have consumers watching this show, which we do, we have I just want you to know that most of the IULs out there that are for income are not really reducing their fees.
Right.
And they do not know how to do it properly, or they're intentionally not doing it.
Well, and the good news is if you have that contract, you can contact us or contact one of our advisors, and you're not stuck in the mud, you're not lost. We just do a simple redesign, we reevaluate the policy, we do a review, and we hopefully get it into a little bit better position for you. So that's one of the services that we provide is we'll analyze these contracts and make them better. But I want to go back to something you kind of started with there before we kind of started talking about that, and you did bring up the fees. I think we'll talk more in the second half about it, but with the full disclosure coming out, I think Limmer said the average fee in the 401k is something like 3.13%. So, I mean, we're talking about a huge number, and we're able to bring our life insurance side down quite a bit. So,
and I'm suspicious that number that you just quoted is everybody all in, but the massive amount of middle America is in employer contracts with 100 employees or less. That's a lot more money. When we come back from the break, we're going to address the calculators and crunch the numbers and display them side by side with 401ks. And remember, don't forget to enroll at IUL University for the best training, education, and sales support when it comes to life insurance.
You're listening to the insurance industry's #1 resource for products, planning ideas, carrier information, and interviews you can use. When it comes to life insurance, annuities, long-term care, disability, or group pension plans, we're the news you can use.
Have you been holding back on submitting your impaired risk case? Now's the time to dig them out of your files in the commission graveyard. Underwriters can be more like undertakers, sleep at the wheel of their hearse and driving your case into a ditch. But at Brokers Alliance, our triage field underwriting team drives your case to our special ICU unit. And because we're driving your case and not the underwriter, we can steer your impaired risk case to the carrier with the expertise specific to your client's impairment. We've separated the underwriters from the undertakers. We know how to breathe life back into your impaired risk case. Diseases don't have to be deal killers. They can be sales opportunities. And don't forget to download the copy of the Impaired Risk Field Guide, the most comprehensive impaired risk report in the industry. Go to www.impairedriskreport.com.
Well, welcome back to the Business Insurance Zone. I'm Steve Savant. This is Eric Palmer, and we're talking about using calculators now that we can actually show all in, which I really love the all in. And remember, our show giveaways this week again. Boy, and I've been pushing these out a lot. Our 1040 overlay, including we're going to be giving you the tax bracket, our digest of the 2012 marginal brackets, as well as the new solar program, which I think is really great. It's a complete kit. All you have to do is order it at thebiz at brokersalliance.com. And remember, before moving forward with anything that you hear on the show, always consult your tax advisor or your broker-dealer compliance department. And remember, we talk about taxes on the show, we just don't advise on the show. So when we're talking about calculators, and this is something that I think is important, I have been carrying an HP 12C around for about 30 years. This is my third one. I've left one on the plane, I destroyed one day, I don't remember. But I'm on my third HP 12C, and if they want to sponsor our show for me bringing that up, I'm there on that.
I have one too.
And you do, HP 12C?
Absolutely.
Okay, well, there's two of them, and there's the second shameless plug. I really think about the calculator because now an agent can go on our calculators, and they can actually crunch the numbers and show, here it is, side by side, the yin and the yang, the spreadsheet, show the grids truly as they are, and do the math. We may not win all the time, but we're going to win A lot of the time.
And we may not win in all the calculators. So we've designed 5 calculators that we feel kind of wrap the whole story together. It's the most common objections, the things that are always on somebody's mind. So first thing we do is we do a simple analysis of S&P, dividend, and rate of return performance if you have an investment portfolio. So what we're trying to display is 0% floors and 14% caps, for example, in an index UL, or maybe some parameters on a basic UL per contract, how that would compare to being all in on like the S&P, for example, as an equity purchase, or having a fixed return as it would relate to, say, a dividend, or maybe you have a money manager that's getting you 6% a year. So we do a comparison to show the long-term effects of that type of growth, and how having things like 0% floors can save your retirement plan from total devastation in a couple of bad years in the stock market. We do an account value comparison to compare, account value growth for traditional plans versus things like index universal life insurance contracts. And we really start with that because a lot of times we want the client to see that, yes, the 401k, for example, could probably have a higher beginning account value. So when we get to our income calculator, it's even more devastating when they see that even though you have more money in that account, it's going to run out faster than some of the alternatives you show them. So the income calculator is the third one. We have a tax calculator and we have a fee calculator. So those are the 5 things that we find most commonly are points that the client wants to address, and there are also the categories where things like index universal life really can overcome a 401k plan.
Now, Eric, we've had this out on the street for about, 60 days almost?
About that, yeah.
Okay. I'm surprised by the activity, not only that we're getting from agents, but advisors who are saying to me that are a little up their game, a little higher than the normal producer, saying, you know what, I never did these numbers right. I'm really surprised at the analytics. And when I read the bottom line, I thought maybe about a third of my clients might be okay using our alternative. Now I'm thinking maybe 2/3 to 80% of my clients could use this alternative.
Well, exactly. We're already looking for a new foundation for retirement. How do we pay the bills, make sure the paycheck keeps coming in? The stock market and the 401ks and all the, we're not saying get out of the market. We're not advising people to stay away, but we're saying that's the golf and the cruise money. That's the fun money in retirement. Let's make sure we can pay your bills. And that's what insurance products really do for people on a more conservative level. Now, these calculators, I have to disclose this. We did make some assumptions on our end. So we placed some basic information about your traditional plan, the fees, what rate of return you think you'll be averaging over a certain amount of time, and we try to compare that exact, apples to apples, if you will, compared to like an index UL, for example. Now, the assumptions that we make in those calculations is we're assuming that things like the companies are typically taking withdrawals out before they apply new interest. So it's part of the math equation. Now, most often we find that traditional retirement plans or insurance companies, even, or if you have annuities, they're applying new interest rate, the new rate of return after the withdrawal, so it's applied to the lower amount of money. So that's part of our equation. We are making that assumption, but it's disclosed in the software. The variance between whether that's applied before or after isn't significant enough for us still not to make the point to the client that this alternative potentially has a better foothold to deliver income than, say, your traditional plan.
Yeah, the thing that I'm really interested in is when we look at the all-in fees, all the taxes that are going to be at during distribution, and again, most Americans that are in 401ks are in corporations that have less than 100 employees. So they're not getting the leverage of the big numbers, no law of large numbers here. So they're paying, you said 3.1, I bet you it's higher than that. I bet you it's probably 3.5 to 3.8. Your number's probably everybody. I'm giving the real number. And when you think about that, fees and taxes, and I'm gonna be able to really take my Social Security out, hopefully free.
Right. Well, my favorite calculator is the fees calculator, because not only does it show a side-by-side comparison of a traditional plan and an index universal life insurance contract, but it also not only flags you when you run out of money, but also you'll notice that no matter how you slice the bread, whether I'm talking to a 25-year-old or a 55-year-old, and I'm doing this comparison, in the first 8 to 12 years, the traditional plans are typically cumulatively less in fees than life insurance. But we already know that. The long-term hold, which is what we're selling these plans for, long-term hold, you're going to hold this contract to the day you die, distribute income at a certain age. The crossover point's usually about 12 years or so, and when it all boils down to it, at life expectancy, we're 1/6 to maybe 1/4 of the cumulative fees on a life insurance contract versus a traditional retirement plan.
Unbelievable. When you think about it, advisors get fees as the asset goes up. So their M&E charges, these charges are always going up every year. Ours is a flatlining because the only thing that's going up is COIs, and if we mitigate that up front and manage it when we are allowed to do it, it can be huge. The numbers aren't even close when you think about it. Remember, you can watch this show and all our shows by clicking on the red on-demand video button right on our homepage at brokersalliance.com. Well, that's the Buzz on the Biz for today. You've been in the zone, the business insurance zone.
The Biz is brought to you by Brokers Alliance, a national leader in insurance products, support services, and educational workshops. When it comes to life insurance, annuities, long-term care, disability, or group pension plans, we're the news you can use.